The words hung in the air like poison, and every person in that courtroom felt the temperature drop. If you believe justice should never bend to wealth, hit that like button right now. Madison Hartwell sat in the defendant's chair, like it was a throne at her country club, one leg crossed over the other, her designer sunglasses still perched on top of her blonde hair despite being indoors, despite being in a court of law. Her posture screamed indifference. Her manicured nails tapped against the polished wood of the defense table with the rhythmic arrogance of someone who had never been told no in her entire 24 years of existence. The courtroom was silent, except for that tapping, and the sound seemed to echo against the oak-paneled walls. Each click, a tiny declaration of contempt. Judge Elias Monroe sat elevated above it all, his weathered hands folded on the bench before him, his gray eyes fixed on the young woman with an expression that revealed nothing. The light filtering through the tall windows cast long shadows across the room, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating with tension. Madison Hartwell wasn't just rich. She was billionaire daughter rich. Her father, Richard Hartwell, owned half the commercial real estate in 3 states, sat on the boards of Fortune 500 companies, and had senators on speed dial. Madison had grown up in a world where money didn't just talk, it dictated. She'd attended the finest schools, not because she earned it, but because her father's donations built entire wings of university buildings with her family name carved in stone. She drove cars that cost more than most people's homes. She vacationed on private islands, and she had never, not once in her privileged existence, faced genuine consequences for anything. Until 3 months ago, when she'd been driving her cherry-red Maserati through downtown at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, drunk, high, and streaming a video to her 500,000 social media followers. Until she ran a red light at 70 miles per hour and T-boned a Honda Civic driven by Thomas Chen, a 42-year-old accountant and father of 2 who was heading home after working late to make ends meet. Until Thomas Chen died on impact, and Madison climbed out of her barely scratched luxury vehicle, laughed into her phone camera, and said, "That was crazy, you guys. I think I just wrecked my car. Dad's gonna be so mad." The prosecution had presented their case with surgical precision over the past 2 days. Traffic camera footage showing Madison's Maserati weaving between lanes, accelerating through intersections, treating public roads like her personal racetrack. Toxicology reports revealing a blood alcohol level nearly 3 times the legal limit, plus cocaine and prescription pills she had no prescription for. The livestream video, viewed by hundreds of thousands before it was taken down, showing Madison behind the wheel with one hand, holding her phone with the other, slurring her words, laughing, completely oblivious to the world around her. Expert testimony about the speed of impact, the physics of the collision, the impossibility of survival. And then, most devastating of all, the victim impact statements. Thomas Chen's widow, Lily, had taken the stand that morning. She was a small woman, her black hair pulled back simply, her hands trembling as she gripped the edges of the witness box. She wore no makeup. Her eyes were ringed with the kind of exhaustion that comes not from lack of sleep, but from the soul-crushing weight of grief. She'd spoken in a voice barely above a whisper, but every word had carried through that courtroom like a scream. She told the court about the phone call that shattered her world, about identifying her husband's body, about telling their 9-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son that Daddy wasn't coming home, that he would never help with homework again, never attend another soccer game, never walk them down any aisle or meet any grandchildren, about the financial devastation of losing the family's primary income, about selling their home, about her daughter's nightmares and her son's sudden terrified refusal to get in cars, about existing in a world where joy felt like betrayal, because how could anything be good when Thomas was gone, when their family was broken, when the person responsible was someone who treated his life like it was worth less than an Instagram moment. During Lily Chen's testimony, Madison Hartwell had yawned, visibly, theatrically. Her defense attorney, Marcus Whitmore, a shark in a $3,000 suit who'd made his career getting wealthy clients off on technicalities, had placed a warning hand on her arm. She'd shrugged it off. When Lily Chen had broken down sobbing on the stand, Madison had rolled her eyes and examined her nails. Now, as the afternoon light slanted through those tall courtroom windows, it was time for sentencing. The jury had deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts: vehicular manslaughter, driving under the influence causing death, reckless endangerment, and leaving the scene of a fatal accident. The evidence had been overwhelming. The verdict had been inevitable. But Madison Hartwell sat in that chair like someone waiting for a mild inconvenience to pass, like someone who knew, with the bone-deep certainty that comes from a lifetime of purchased immunity, that this too would be handled, fixed, made to disappear. Judge Monroe's chambers had seen 30 years of cases. He'd presided over murders and frauds, domestic violence and corporate crimes. He'd seen people at their worst and their best. He'd learned to read faces, to spot genuine remorse, to distinguish between crocodile tears and real grief. And in all those years, in all those cases, he had never seen anyone quite like Madison Hartwell. The complete absence of empathy, the total lack of accountability, the sheer contemptuous arrogance radiating from her like heat from asphalt in summer. "Ms. Hartwell," Judge Monroe said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife through silk. "Please stand." Madison glanced at her attorney, who nodded urgently. She stood with deliberate slowness, making a show of how bored she was, how beneath her this all was. Marcus Whitmore stood beside her, his jaw tight, his briefcase probably full of appeals already drafted. "You have been found guilty by a jury of your peers on 4 serious charges," Monroe continued, his gray eyes never leaving Madison's face. "Before I impose sentence, the court will now hear any statement you wish to make. Do you have anything to say?" This was the moment. In Monroe's 3 decades on the bench, he'd seen it go 2 ways. Either the defendant expressed genuine remorse, took responsibility, showed some glimmer of human decency, even if it came too late to matter, or they remained defiant, dug in, revealed exactly who they were. Madison Hartwell smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or a desperate smile. It was the smile of someone about to play what she believed was a winning card. "Your Honor," she said, and her voice dripped with condescension, the tone of someone addressing a servant. "I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. Yes, there was an accident. Yes, that's unfortunate. But accidents happen every day. I've already offered a settlement to the Chen family, a generous one, more money than they would have seen in a lifetime. My father's attorneys have been in contact with them, and we're prepared to make this go away quietly. Everyone can win here. The family gets compensated. I get to move on with my life. And this court doesn't have to waste any more time on something that can be resolved with a check." A collective intake of breath rippled through the courtroom. Several jurors looked physically ill. Lily Chen, sitting in the front row of the gallery, closed her eyes as tears streamed down her face. But Madison wasn't finished. "I mean, let's be realistic here," she continued, warming to her theme, gesturing with one perfectly manicured hand. "Thomas Chen was an accountant. No offense to the family, but he wasn't exactly curing cancer or running companies. His economic value was limited. We're offering them more than he would have earned in his entire remaining career. That's more than fair. That's generous. And honestly, dragging this out, putting everyone through this circus, it's not helping anyone. It's just vindictive." She paused, and then delivered the line that would define her. "My father contributes millions to this city every year. He builds things. He employs thousands of people. He makes things happen. This court answers to the people, and the people benefit from what my family does. So let's all be smart about this and wrap this up with the settlement." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that feels like pressure in your ears, like the moment before an explosion. Marcus Whitmore had gone pale. He looked like a man watching a train wreck in slow motion, unable to stop it. In the gallery, Lily Chen's brother had to physically restrain her husband's best friend from lunging forward. The bailiff's hand moved instinctively to his belt. Judge Elias Monroe sat motionless for a long moment. His expression hadn't changed, but something in the air had shifted. The temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried the weight of stone. "Ms. Hartwell," he said, "did you just tell this court that it answers to you?" Madison blinked, some small survival instinct finally triggering a warning in her brain. But her arrogance was too deeply ingrained to recognize real danger. "I said it answers to the people," she corrected. "And my family serves the people through our business and philanthropy." "I see." Monroe leaned back in his chair, his hands still folded. "And in your view, How much is a human life worth? Precisely. Give me a number. That's not what I meant. You offered the Chen family a settlement. You said it was generous. You compared it to Mr. Chen's projected lifetime earnings. You suggested his economic value was limited. So I'm asking you directly, what is the dollar value you've placed on Thomas Chen's life? Madison's attorney tried to intervene. Your Honor, my client was simply trying to express, Mr. Whitmore, I'm not asking you. I'm asking your client, who just stood in my courtroom and attempted to reduce a human being's existence to a line item in a ledger. Ms. Hartwell, answer the question. Madison's face had finally started to show something other than bored confidence. Uncertainty flickered in her eyes. I don't know the exact amount. That's what the lawyers negotiate. $2 million, Monroe said, pulling a document from the file before him. That's what your father's attorneys offered the Chen family in exchange for their agreement not to pursue civil litigation and to support leniency in sentencing. $2 million. For a husband, a father, a man with 30 more years of life ahead of him. A man who by every account was kind, hard-working, devoted to his family, and active in his community. He set the document down. Ms. Hartwell, my house is worth approximately $300,000. I've lived there for 28 years. My wife and I raised 2 children there. It holds every important memory of my adult life. By your logic, Thomas Chen's entire existence, his past and his future, every memory he might have made, every moment with his children, every anniversary with his wife, every contribution he might have made to this world, all of that is worth less than 7 of my houses. Madison opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Monroe continued, and now there was something in his voice, a controlled fury that made the air vibrate. You stood in this courtroom, in front of the woman whose husband you killed, in front of his children who will grow up without a father, and you suggested that this was a matter that could be resolved with a check. You implied that this court, that the justice system itself, should bend to your family's wealth and influence. You called this proceeding a circus. You called seeking justice for a dead man vindictive. He paused, and the pause stretched. Ms. Hartwell, I want to make something very clear to you, and I want you to listen carefully because I don't believe anyone in your life has ever said this to you before. You are not special. The words landed like physical blows. Madison actually flinched. Your father's money does not make you special, Monroe continued, his voice steady and inexorable as a glacier. Your family name does not make you special. Your social media followers do not make you special. Your designer clothes, an expensive car, and private schools do not make you special. In this courtroom, in the eyes of the law, you are exactly the same as every other person who has ever stood where you're standing. The law doesn't care about your bank account. Justice doesn't calculate net worth. And this court absolutely does not answer to you or anyone like you. He let that sink in before continuing. You want to know what makes someone special? Thomas Chen was special. He worked 60-hour weeks to provide for his family. He coached his daughter's soccer team every Saturday. He volunteered at a food bank every Sunday. He helped his elderly neighbor with grocery shopping. He was learning Mandarin so his children could connect with their heritage. He was a good man, Ms. Hartwell. A genuinely good man. And you killed him because you thought rules didn't apply to you, because you were drunk and high and thought your privilege would protect you from consequences, because you have lived your entire life believing the world revolves around you. Tears were finally streaming down Madison's face, but they were tears of shock and fear, not remorse. She was finally understanding, perhaps for the first time in her life, that her father's money couldn't fix this. That she couldn't laugh this away or buy her way out or have someone handle it for her. You left the scene of the accident, Monroe said, his voice dropping lower. You didn't call for help. You didn't check on Mr. Chen. You left a dying man trapped in his vehicle and went home to your mansion and went to sleep. The police found you 12 hours later, after you'd had time to sober up, after your father's attorneys had already been contacted, after the PR machine had already started spinning. You showed no remorse then. You've shown no remorse during this trial. Even now, standing here after being convicted, you tried to bribe this court and insulted the victim's family. He opened a thick legal document and adjusted his reading glasses. The prosecution has recommended 20 years in state prison. Your defense has requested probation and community service, arguing that you have no prior record and that incarceration would be unduly harsh. I've reviewed both recommendations. I've reviewed the evidence. I've reviewed your complete lack of accountability, and I've reviewed the law very carefully. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the ancient radiators ticking. Every eye was on Judge Monroe. Madison Hartwell stood frozen, her face streaked with mascara, her perfect facade finally cracking. Ms. Hartwell, for the crime of vehicular manslaughter while operating a vehicle under the influence of drugs and alcohol, I sentence you to the maximum penalty allowed by law, 25 years in state prison. For the crime of leaving the scene of a fatal accident, I sentence you to an additional 3 years, to run consecutively. For reckless endangerment, 2 years, also consecutive. You will serve a total of 30 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Madison's legs gave out. She collapsed back into her chair, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Marcus Whitmore looked like he'd been struck by lightning. In the gallery, Lily Chen sobbed into her brother's shoulder, but these were different tears now. Thomas's best friend had his fist pressed against his mouth, his eyes closed. But Monroe wasn't finished. Additionally, your driver's license is permanently revoked. You will never operate a vehicle again. Your assets are frozen pending resolution of civil liability. Your passport is surrendered to the court. You are remanded into custody immediately. He removed his glasses and looked directly at Madison, and his voice softened just slightly, not with sympathy, but with something heavier, sadder. Ms. Hartwell, you are 24 years old. If you serve your minimum sentence, you will be 39 when you're first eligible for parole. That means you will miss your 20s and 30s. You will miss whatever career you might have had. You will miss relationships, friendships, experiences. You will live in a 6x8 cell. You will eat prison food. You will follow prison rules. You will be treated exactly like every other inmate, and your father's money won't change that. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone in that room. I want you to understand something. This isn't punishment for punishment's sake. This isn't about revenge or making an example. This is about consequences. You took a life through your reckless, selfish actions. You destroyed a family. You robbed children of their father and a woman of her husband. And you did it all while believing you were above the very idea of accountability. This sentence is intended to communicate something that your privilege has prevented you from ever learning. Actions have consequences, choices matter, and human life has infinite value that cannot be calculated in dollars or dismissed with settlements. He picked up his gavel, and the sound of wood on wood was like a gunshot. This court is adjourned. The bailiffs moved forward immediately, and Madison Hartwell, who had arrived at the courthouse that morning in a chauffeured Mercedes wearing a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, was handcuffed and led away in tears. She kept looking back at her father's attorneys in the gallery, kept waiting for someone to fix this, to make it stop, to reset reality to what she believed it should be. But no one moved. No one could, because this was justice, and justice doesn't negotiate. Lily Chen sat in that courtroom for a long time after everyone else had left, her brother's arm around her shoulders. She stared at the empty chair where Madison had sat, at the defense table now abandoned, at the bench where Judge Monroe had sat like the voice of moral authority itself. She would never have her husband back. No sentence could give her that. But for the first time in 3 months, she could breathe a little easier. Because someone had finally said what needed to be said. Because someone had finally valued Thomas's life as worth more than money. Because justice, real justice, had been served. In the hallway outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and the story began to spread. But inside that empty courtroom, in the fading afternoon light, there was only silence and the ghost of a voice saying, "This court does not answer to you. Thomas Chen's life mattered. His family's pain matters. And no amount of wealth or privilege or arrogance can ever change that fundamental truth. If you believe justice should be blind to wealth and power, if you believe no one should ever be above the law no matter how much money they have, show your support by smashing that like button, subscribing to this channel, and commenting "Justice for All" below. Let us know where you're watching from, and share this story with anyone who needs to remember that true justice sees only right and wrong, never bank accounts.